Let's go. So, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Your Excellencies, noble members of the Nigerian Roundtable, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. May we also acknowledge the presence of our previous speakers and panelists, should any of them be here. It is my privilege to welcome you all to this important interactive session. Today's topic revolves around making our democracy work. It is about how our democracy can produce good governance through a transparent process that allows the will of the people to prevail. The title of our topic tonight is Democracy, the Imperative of Credible Elections and Good Governance. The question we shall try to address as Nigeria's next consequential election is fast approaching is, in a democracy, is there a connection between credible elections and good governance? Are they connected in any way? So in our conversation this evening, we shall try to interrogate if there is any connection. So the recently passed electoral laws in Nigeria have ignited a renewed lively debate among Nigerians at home and abroad, bringing the topic back to the forefront of public discourse in Nigeria. So without much ado, I am Dr. Jones Edobo, an economist and a consultant residing in Vienna, Austria, a member of the Nigerian Global Roundtable. Your co-host for tonight is Professor Omonigo Otanosha, who is not yet here, as I said earlier, who just landed in Addis Ababa, but he will be joining us later. A professor of engineering at the Federal University of Petroleum Resources, Warri. In the meantime, Professor Peter Beekam, also a professor who lectures in South Africa, shall deputize for him as co-host. And when he arrives, both of them will carry on as co-host. I have the honor to introduce our guest speaker, no one other than Barrister Mike Igini, the former INEC Resident Commissioner. He was an insider who is truly an expert in election-related matters in Nigeria. So just a brief citation from his long CV. Barrister Mike Igini is an alumnus of University of Benin. I hope I'm correct. I thought I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. He was first appointed by President Goodluck Ebere Jonathan of the PDP on 8 June 2010 as Resident Electoral Commissioner, and was reappointed by President Muhammadu Buhari on account of his exceptional public acknowledged integrity, neutral disposition, and votary for credible election as resident commissioner for another 5 years term, and was the only one reappointed from the South and Southeast by the president. He successfully prosecuted and secured the conviction of 2 university professors now serving jail terms for election rigging in Akwa Ibom State, which is very, very unusual in Nigeria. You know, often people who rig elections get away with it in Nigeria, but he has been able to prosecute, successfully prosecute 2 professors. He is noted for the famous quote that he came to Akwa Ibom to count votes and not to count money. So I think he's trying to talk about the corruption and the pressure with collecting money and declaring false election, which he has always resisted. He completed his tenure in August 2022 before the 2023 elections as the Resident Electoral Commissioner of Akwa Ibom State in Nigeria. During his tenure, He served in many states, including Cross River State, Anambra State, Osun State, Imo State, and Edo State. All elections managed and supervised by him as a commissioner in the different states of the country have been widely acknowledged as elections conducted with adherence to and strict observance of the highest principle of ethical standards expected of an umpire. He always ensured a playing field with a legitimate outcome, irrespective of the political power, a party in power. And none of the elections he has conducted has been overturned or nullified by a tribunal court in Nigeria. His uncompromising good work has been acknowledged by citizens and political parties alike, given the wide acceptance of his election results. With him here this evening are also two expert panelists to discuss the issues in an interactive format. So thank you very much, Mr. Igini. We appreciate your accepting our invitation to be here this evening to talk on the issue. So you are welcome, sir. We have two panelists here. One is Dr. Akpo Mudiaga Oje. Prince Akpo Mudiaga Oje has been here before as a panelist, so some of you may remember him. He is an alumnus of the University of Benin, who graduated with a degree in law in 1992 and was called to the Nigerian bar in 1993. So it appears the main speaker and our panelists, all of them are from the University of Benin today. So which is fantastic. In 1994, he was admitted to the London School of Economics and Political Science to pursue a master's degree in law and obtain master's degree in law from LSE in 1995. In recognition of his steadfastness in the struggle for his people, in August 2008, he was conferred with an honoris causa Doctor of Law by the Commonwealth University College Institute of Arts and Science in Belize City, in Belize. He has served as a special assistant to the Attorney General of Delta State and a special advisor on constitutional matters to the erstwhile Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives. Dr. Oje has so far written 8 books comprising the Niger Delta Question, Rule of Law, Electoral Reforms, Oil and Gas Law, and Challenges of Leadership in Nigeria. His agitation for resource control and development issues has launched an uncompromising stance against the establishment in the Niger Delta region. He is a renowned constitutional lawyer. You are welcome, sir, Dr. Oje.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you very much. Great talk.
Okay, so I now call on Barrister Mike Igini to start his presentation. Thank you all. Thank you very much for your presence here. So over to you, Barrister.
Okay, so once again, thank you, everybody, for this evening's interaction, to have a honest conversation about the future of democracy and good governance in our country. Akpo, it's been a long time, so really I want to thank Dubo that for a very long time we have not actually seen, although I read about you all the time, and quite a number of people who are on this platform tonight to have this honest conversation. Dr. Dubo, I want to thank you because you know the sustained engagement we had for me to be part of this program. Quite frankly, I must say this, I almost get disillusioned about our country, that this is a country that has so much potential, a country that the challenge we're having is all about leadership, because if we're able to resolve the leadership question in Nigeria, I believe that the speed with which Nigeria will attain greatness will be like the speed of a rocket. And so here we are 66 years after independence. We are still grappling with the intricacies of nationhood, how to live together has been a major problem. Well, as you all know, I am not in active politics at the moment, nor partisan. But I speak as a Nigerian who advocated for credible elections prior to my appointment as Resident Electoral Commissioner in INEC. We saw the problems before we went in, and when we got into INEC, we established system. We developed tools, process, and procedure that are robust and replicable to address historical challenges of election service delivery in our country. Because the subject matter today is about democracy, the imperative of credible elections and good governance. That is what we are all talking about here. So we develop all these processes to be able to address this issue. And so we saw it worked as evidence at least between 2011 to 2023 in terms of the outcome of the elections. Some of you saw that Divo Okada rather won elections. But public trust was shattered when 3 elections were conducted the same day: presidential, senatorial, House of Representative election were conducted. And 2 of those elections were House of Rep and senatorial were transmitted to the IREV for public view, but that of the presidential was not. And there was no clear explanation with respect to the issue about the glitch. That was what shattered public trusts. And, you know, when public trust is lost, it's difficult to fix after the fact. This is the problem that the Commission and all of us have now faced in terms of how we see elections. So, but my commitment so far, and the reason why I accepted to be part of, because really, I have asked myself, who are we speaking to? It's a case of the far corner, no longer listening to the far corner. You all saw how the Nigerian people, because one of the reasons we fought military was that there was no parliament. We didn't have people representative. But here we are. You saw the National Assembly, you know, during the amendment of the Electoral Act, went around the geopolitical zone to take their views as to the type of reform required for credible election in our country. And the geopolitical zones were very clear as to the fact that they needed the transmission of result compulsory, mandatory. But of course, they came back and they changed everything. And so that's why I told Dr. Edobo, look, doctor, what do I want to say? We went in there. I spent 10 years. On the whole, I spent over 30 years on how Nigeria will be a better place. 10 years I spent practically doing the job. But we are out. Immediately we are out, they started rolling back everything that we have done. And so tonight, I want us to be very clear, you know, and all Nigerians should know this, that we must clear one fundamental truth, and that is that credible elections are not optional in a democracy. Credible elections are not optional in the democracy because without them, election becomes a mere ritual without actually choosing. And without credible elections, good governance becomes a slogan. And with credible elections, then of course, governor becomes accountable. Because the whole embrace of democracy is essentially because it brings about participation and accountability to the process of human development. That's why we embrace democracy. And so when election, the vote don't count, or when they are counted and not taken into account, election actually becomes a mere ritual without actually choosing. That was why, when we came on board, we developed those tools, starting from identifying election rigging provisions. We found in the Electoral Act 2010, when we came aboard in 2010, and we approached the National Assembly, wrote to President Goodluck Jonathan, whose votary for credible election due process is known by everyone. And good enough, in the course of this conversation, you find that Goodluck Jonathan, President Goodluck Jonathan, stand tall over and above all the presidents that have had in this country in terms of his commitment for having, because the first alteration to Section 160 of the Constitution was effected by President Goodluck Jonathan, because the law prior to our coming on board was to the effect that all the executive bodies established under Section 153 of the Constitution, they were all answerable. There are 14 of them. Code of Conduct, NJC, all the bodies, National Defense Council, all of these bodies. But when we came on board, we said, no, INEC as an umpire that should be saddled with the constitutional duty to midwife democratic competition should not be answerable to Mr. President, who's partisan. That was sent to President Jonathan. And Jonathan now effected the first alteration, which now gave a very interesting proviso to the effect that of all the executive bodies established under Section 153 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, with respect to the Independent National Electoral Commission, its powers to make its own rules or determine its own procedure shall not be subject to the direction or control of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. That was what President Goodluck Jonathan did, to give us freedom. And that was why we embarked on the first idea, the regime of what they call the card reader. Started with the card reader. In fact, before the card reader, Section 49 was the rigging provision. I am sure today that there's a video that is making a round. I hope it's not correct, but it appears to be true, about election that's going on in Ekiti today, where they were giving PVC to people. So you could see, Dr. When I said, I just want to talk about this country and all that, these were things that we have addressed through technology, because what they are going at, we are going back to pre-2023, 2003, 2007 election. That Section 49 that took us 20 years to repeal under the 2022 Electoral Act was to the effect that any Nigerian who wants to vote, a presiding officer, that's the provision, a presiding officer who is satisfied that anybody that before him, he will issue him or her a ballot paper to vote and mark the manual register. That's what they are doing today in Ekiti. That video you saw. All right? And that was why, because Section 52 of the 2010 Act had prohibited the use of electronic system. That was why Nigeria, you can remember that when we came on board, we decided to do what we call separate time for accreditation and separate time for voting. And you all know that doing that, because what we wanted to know, we were out for the principle of one person, one vote. And so it was that provision that led to politicians buying those manually issued voters card. So you can give it to anybody. All you require is to compromise the presiding officer, because the law says if he's satisfied, which is not objective, whatever satisfies him, we don't even know at all. So if he's given money, he's satisfied. So that was why they started, warehousing, buying voters card, compromising INEC staff and all that. So we were the one that changed that regime and all that. What is happening today in Ekiti? If the presiding officer is not compromised, there's no way they can use those cards, because when you appear before the beavers, you know, if you once your name say Dr. Edobo and all that, your picture will show. But if the Dr. Edobo is holding another person's PVC, the picture will also show that it will not there. It will be there. You could claim the name, but you cannot claim the picture because it will be in contrast. And so what has been shown today are some of the things that we have read. And so it must be noted that every election, because I'm just giving a background so that we'll go to the fundamental issues, that every election is a test, but the 2027 election will be more than a test on account of the level of anger and hunger in the country. And two, that the credibility and outcome of election has implications for national security. Nigeria has so much problem right now. We have to be very, very, very careful as we're approaching the 2027 election against the background of some of the issues that we are going to address tonight. And three is that we have seen in places like in Kenya in 2007, 2008, and several other places where nations and cities were destroyed, people killed, men, on account of unacceptable electoral outcome. We have seen once happy people contended and tribal people become homeless and hopeless in IDP camp. So we have to be careful. Therefore, why does credible election matters? Why does credible election matter? You see, democracy, the greatest promise of democracy is peaceful transfer of power. And so democracy has four essential promises. First is voice. Second is choice. Third is accountability. And of course, the fourth is peaceful transfer of power. All three break down. If the election that is not credible, then we have a problem. So with respect to choice, without credibility of elections, it means without a system that will allow people to make a choice, participation, then of course there will be a problem. And that is why you look at what happened in 2023, where in several places, like in Lagos, where we are domiciled, people look at the millions that we have, because Kano used to be the electoral postal state in the country. But the population of Lagos, when we used technology, when we came aboard, clear that Lagos was more. But voter suppression, people are not being allowed to make a choice. Even in our own Delta state, somewhere in the Delta North, I don't want to mention the name, there is one popular guy who was also asking people not to come and vote. And so choice is key. And if citizen vote don't count, their voice has no path to power. And that's why how you get a disconnect between the government and the governed. Then, of course, accountability. Now, if people don't get to power through the vote of the people, there could be no basis for accountability. They will not be accountable to you. Because the fear of the people is usually the beginning of responsible leadership. If there's no authorization, there will be no basis for accountability. And so accountability is the four critical elements when you are talking about credible election. And so a credible election is an election that every stakeholder, majority, will believe and trust the process on how a leader has emerged. And a fair election is an election that anyone can win. And so, what are the critical elements, that essential features of election that could be said to be credible. Globally, there are two metrics for measuring credible elections. One is process indicator, and number two is outcome indicator. Now, under process indicators, you have other elements, such as primarily the legal framework. And under the legal framework, in terms of sanctity of law, to produce what we call in election parlance or sanctity of outcome, because the law should be known, sufficiently known by all stakeholders. But the outcome can only be determined after the votes have been counted. So we talked about the sanctity of law for substantive or sanctity of outcome in terms of the people's decision as to who becomes what. Now, and that is where we are going to dwell on the first issue. But beyond that, it's issue about the credible voter register, because every election, the foundation of any credible election is the existence of a voter register. And what we did, the Jega leadership that was part of it 2010 and 2011, we were the first that successfully ended the ritual of every 4 years calling Nigerians of 60 years old, 80 years old, coming out to come and register. When we were able to do all one of the foundational element of the e-tracks, of the e-voting system, which is e-voters register. We're able to have what we call compile the biometric voter register for the country, such that you register once in your lifetime. But if you have changed your place of domicile, you can always make those changes from the advert the INEC have been putting on now. So credible register is very, very key. Number three, under process indicator. And this is the area Nigeria need to look at when you are going for a 2027 election. I have sent something to Dr. Edobo. You may put it out so that people can see where the problem we are going to have for the forthcoming election, people should focus on. And that has to do with ad hoc staff, recruitment of ad hoc staff, and deployment, particularly recruitment. You know, before we came on board, primary school teachers, like you find in Ghana and other parts of the world, West Africa countries, are the ones usually engaged as presiding officers, as supervising presiding officers, collation officers, and returning officers. But because they are under the control of states, what we found was that in the past election, rigged election, was that most of the people you find at polling units in the states where they teach. That was why, under our leadership, we changed the template and decided to be using the youth corpus. We went to meet with NYSC, young men and women who had just graduated, serving the country 1 year compulsory service. On the year of election, they are the ones now being deployed. But like everything in Nigeria, they had also infiltrated the NYSC. Their leadership in the past, so fake uniform and all of that. So the NYC, that is where you could, as well as the universities. Of course, some of the people that were proceeded against are from the university, because these were people ordinarily of presumed integrity. But I must say this, that the actions of a few university done cannot be said to overshadow the fantastic work majority, good number of them have done, getting them involved in that election. But the challenge we have now is that On election day, and that's what I sent to Dr. Edobo, you at some point you need to put it out there, is that INEC chairman, INEC national commissioner, resident commissioner, the EOs, these categories of persons I've mentioned, whereas they will do all the preparations for this forthcoming election, but on election day, they don't conduct elections. They don't conduct election. And that is the challenge we are going to face as we come back to look at the law, the booby traps contained in the 2026 Electoral Act, which is a regression from what we have achieved in 2022. And so, ad hoc staff recruitment. And of course, we talked about the outcome of that election. So, does the election reflect the will of the people? So, we talk about outcome indicator. Now, from 2011, 2015, 2019, and more importantly, 2023, as I noted, way back in 2012, I was a commissioner in Cross River State. The second term election of Governor Lie Imoke for second term, I sat in my office, just as all of us were on this program. There's a dashboard in my office when the first pilot of e-transmission from local government was carried out. The team from head office in Abuja came with the local team under Jega leadership. We piloted it. Right in my office, the 18 local government of Cross River State, all the results came in. I sat in my chair and I was seeing the result as we were updating, as they were collating. And way back in 2012. Way back in 2012. And so it was quite strange when in 2023, now going to 2027, something has been done to undermine the process that we had used to conduct 105 elections, including off-season 5 governorship elections before I left office in 2022 August, because I was not part of the 2023 elections. And so, as we are going to 2027, how is it possible to build public trust in an electoral process when there are provisions in the 2026 Electoral Act that are deliberately inserted or previous one brought back to undermine the integrity of credible election? So the first is to look at Section 60 of the 2026 Electoral Act. Recall that in 2022, after 20 years, it took us 20 years to persuade National Assembly to change all the election rigging provisions. You must need to understand, because you must ask yourself, why is it that Nigerian politicians are quick to tell opponent, go to court, go to court? The reason has only been that they are put in there to perpetuate themselves in office through the electoral process. And so it took 20 years. And it was in 2022 that changed. Now, when we came up with the idea of the beavers, transition from the card reader to the beavers, Section 60 of the 2022 Electoral Act was very clear, and to the effect that presiding officer at the end of the poll, he or she is required to transmit the result to the IRF. Ladies and gentlemen, here's your background about the whole idea about IRF. You know, all the previous years, election rigging that you'll be hearing about, someone won election at the polling unit. either on his way or the presiding officer on his way to the work collection officer and to the work collection center, or right at the collection center where they prevent agents of other party from entering that venue or local government, results were normally changed. Now, what we did with this technology, in recognition of the fact that any organization or society that fails to embrace the benefit of technology will be overtaken by the chaos or decay and decline, particularly in election management, was that I, for example, I am now the presiding officer. In the old regime that we change of election rigging, Dr. Edobo is the work collection officer. All through the period that the election exercise was going on in the polling unit, at the end of the poll, results have been entered, results declared, I have given duplicate to party agent. All these processes, Dr. Edobo will not know until I get to him. No formal communication at all. It is this period on my way to see Dr. Edobo, I will either switch the result, as I attempted to do when I was in charge of Imo State, and I cut them, or when I get to Dr. Edobo, either it's been compromised, or for other reasons or not that, they will change the result there. So, but what we did with the beavers was that dark alley, we needed to change it. So, by the legal requirement of mandatory under Section 60 of the 2022 Electoral Act, supported by paragraph 38 of the regulations and guidelines of INEC made pursuant to Section 160, that was effected by Pedegulo Jonathan, Dr. Edobo, without talking to me, he has a code to see the result. So what betide me that I will come to Dr. Edobo with a result different from what has happened here? That was what ended the rigging. Regrettably, my constituency, the judiciary, that historically had never stood on the side of the people's vote, and you all know this very well, 1979, 1983, up to where we are today, I make bold to say that my constituency has never stood on the side of the people, on the side of the sanctity of the ballot. It was the Supreme Court decision that IREV is a viewing point, it's just a mere viewing entertainment center, that it ought to have been written in the Electoral Act, that IREV ought to have been written in the Electoral Act. Why? They said in the regulation and guideline. Meanwhile, regulation and guideline is a subsidiary legislation. INEC power to make regulation and guideline determine its own procedure was not derived from the Electoral Act, but from the Constitution. And the court ought to have given effect to it because INEC is a regulator. And all of you know that the first primary responsibility of any regulator of any sector is rulemaking. So why would Supreme Court say that? It was that statement made by Supreme Court that led to the tragedy of the current proviso under the 2026 Electoral Act, to the effect that the presiding officer shall electronic, while retaining the text of the 2022 Electoral Act, went to say that the presiding officer, if there's no network and all that, all you need to do is to make do with the Form EC8A original, which has always been there. Meanwhile, why that was a tragedy, so that when we were designing the beavers, we recognized the fact that even in the most effective network coverage area, sometimes there may be no network in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, as the case may be. So the beavers were designed to work both online and offline. So at the polling unit, once even there, assuming there's even no network, the moment you transmit that result, shortly afterwards, either while you are still there or immediately you move out of that particular spot, that result will be delivered on the IRF. And so the first challenge that we now have is that proviso. And what has been the attitude of the court up to the Supreme Court? The court always made the point that whenever a proviso, is inserted and that to a provision, it creates an exception and it derogates from the intendment of the statutory provision. So the first challenge is Section 60 of the 2023 Electoral Act with respect to result transmission. Because ultimately, the choice of the people made, because the whole idea, what the vision we had, was that we were to get to a point where INEC results, outcome of election, should be determined finally and conclusively at the polling unit at the last point of collation, not in the court of law. We were to end that business of going to court, because that's what is damaging, has given a bad reputation to the judiciary, and that's my constituency. That was the whole idea of the innovation. But today, the court itself is also not helpful in that direction. Number two is Section 63 of the current act, which although was there, but tried to bypass it. But right now, they have introduced it into the 2023 Electoral Act to the effect that a presiding officer is at liberty to accept a ballot paper that was cast that does not have the security features of the ballot of INEC, notwithstanding the absence of official mark, that the presiding officer should accept that. So we are back again to a situation where people can produce INEC result and ballot paper. That's ballot paper. Now, the House Committee Chair, in his response to this, particularly when I intervened, he demonstrated gross ignorance of what ballot security features are about, because he was talking about stamp and stamp pad. All of you here know that sign writers on the street, they produce stamp. So INEC, when they want to give contract about stamp, he gives to anybody and all of that. Those are not the real security features of INEC, because the stamp, then when they give that contract, people buy stamp, ink, and all of that. Those are not the real security features and all that. The security features are the coding, their security code, the watermark. And that was why I referred to them that, look, what I'm saying here, why this section is dangerous, is that a senator was returned, somebody was returned as a senator to the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who printed his own results. Of course, we connivers with people from staff from INEC. They got some of the security features, but not complete, because there's no what you call a complete. There's no there's expression I normally use and all that. There's no perfect crime. INEC under Mahmoud went to court. My colleague was in charge of Imo State. They went to court, presented the original of INEC result. But what happened? My constituency, the judiciary, upheld a forged result. Equally, you are aware that the current sitting governor, one of the governors in Southeast, had forged NYC. The NYC DG, a brigadier general, went to the court to present the original, to contradict the fake one. But what happened? The court upheld forged certificate. So when we are going for election, you now have Section 63, subsection 2 of the 2023 Electoral Act. It's a recipe for rigging of election. And that was why we pointed it out. I'll now go further to Section 65. Now, part of our effort in 2022 was to the fact that, look, gentlemen, as an umpire, how come that we'll appoint ad hoc staff? We appoint ad hoc staff to go and conduct election, and the law said that whatever they say is final. They are no longer answerable to us. Meanwhile, these are people that were just engaged on a matter of 3 days or 4 days training. Remember, I just told you that INEC Commissioner, National Commissioner, REC EO, they don't conduct the elections. It is these ad hoc people selected from the Nigerian society that actually conduct the election on that day. And so we decided, persuaded National Assembly, INEC, there should be an amendment of Section 68 of the old 2010 Act, which was effected. We now have Section 65. Section 65 says that any declaration of results outside due process, that INEC, the commission, has the power to review it within 7 days. Now, this was to take away what you have in Section 285 of the Constitution. We are the only country that politicians have programmed our election into the court system. That an issue that INEC can resolve, for example, if in 2 local governments, there's claim report that election it took place in 1, did not take place in 2. All that is required is to do forensic examination of the document, of the ballot, and that can be done in a matter of hours. But under the old law, all of this matter must go to court. With respect to governorship, the law says that they can spend from the beginning, starting of the petition, they spend 6 months, half a year in court for something that INEC could do within hours. So the law now gives INEC power to review such thing together with the participant to review it. You know what has happened now? Under the current act, they have changed the law to the effect that any such review can only be based on the report of the official. The people that they are also going to compromise will only be the one that will write the report that will form the basis of INEC to review. That is what they have done again. I want to skip Section 77, but very briefly on that, because that has to do with the issue about primaries and so on and so forth. You see, the light of democracy is going out gradually in our country, because Section 40 is very clear. The freedom of association, particularly to belong to a union, to belong to a political party of your choice for the advancement of your political interest. That's what the Constitution says. It's there. Section 77, in an attempt, and who were the one that made that suggestion in 2022, that look, direct primary is the best because it gives opportunity for party members to be able to have a choice, to make a choice of who should be a candidate. Because under the delegate system, all they do is that the governors and all the leaders and all that, they just handpick people they want to handpick as delegate and all that to determine who should be a candidate. Therefore, we will now make the argument that for you to talk about that, you must have your own register. So that you submit that register. It's on the basis of that register that when people now come for direct primary, there will be accreditation like June 12, where, remember that in June 12, where people queued before their candidate, before that they will already be accredited. But what you saw in the so-called primary was option A fraud that we saw, and not option A4 of that type. But in any case, did you ever see them carry out accreditation process, even though the law said that they should submit the register to INEC 21 days before their primaries? We didn't see that happen. But what is more worrisome is the fact that the House of Rep I don't know how far the thing has gone, whether it has gone to the upper chambers. Now, in an attempt to cage people in political parties where they have defected to, they now try to criminalize any interaction with another political party where, if you are found with that, is it 2 years jail term and 10 million naira? How can you say that? Because if we have 3 political parties, Party A, I belong to Party A previously, and Party A, I was denied participation after buying nomination form for primaries. I have been denied. Party B was here to conduct primaries, as well as Party C. Under the Constitution, issue about qualification and disqualification have been settled. The National Assembly has zero competence to go there because Section 65, Section 131, Section 65 has to do with who can go to the House of Rep, as well as National Assembly, Legislative House. Section 131, Presidential, Section 177 had been settled. And what is the provision on all of these provisions I mentioned to you are to the effect that you must be a Nigerian citizen of certain age, but fundamentally, perhaps far more important, is that you must belong to a political party and be sponsored by that political party. So if Party A, if you deny me access in Party A, I am free in the essence of my freedom to go to Party B. And if Party B decides to accept me as their member and decide to sponsor me, you cannot criminalize that. That was what they have put in there. Of course, you know, before in February, I pointed out to them, I provided a table to show the rate of attrition, how most of them they are going to suffer. Most of them will not return back. From what I'm hearing now, I try to put the data together, over going to 80% of them are not going to return back to the National Assembly. And this is the problem we have. And I will come to one of the fundamental issues that need to be in respect of that. So Section 77, that's with respect to that. Now, Dr. Adobo, I don't know whether you can put that thing on because I am getting to the last 2 provisions. But Section 134 of the 2022 Act on the grant to challenge election, 2 of the grants that we had before in 2022 Act have been removed under the current 2026 Electoral Act. One of which is that if you force certificate, any of the certificate required, that to the fact that as I tell a lecture, you were not qualified. That was an issue. Today, they have removed it to the effect that anybody can go to any business center. You can forge any certificate now. And rather, I don't know the kind of message they are sending to the young people. And number 2, you also had in the 2022 Electoral Act the fact that if you have been validly nominated by your political party and you are unlawfully excluded, that was a grant to challenge the outcome of election. But today, they have removed that. What is the purpose of all that? Which means that anybody can just do that. And that's what they have done under the current Section 138 of the current Act. Now, and this is where it is most worrisome. And that's why what I sent to Dr. Adobo, your WhatsApp, on your WhatsApp, is very, very, very key. Now, you can see what I've just showed you. Look at that pyramid.
Okay.
Take a look at that pyramid. Now, if you look at this pyramid, the first is the chief electoral officer of the country, the professor, the current chairman of the commission, that's headquarters. Then the second is the INEC state offices where you have the resident commissioners. Then, of course, you have the INEC LG office where you have the EO. Now, after the blue column, from the SPOs, who are supervising presiding officers. Remember I told you about process indicators, and I talk about recruitment. All these categories of people supervising presiding officers, the INEC election management is like an exchange of batting. And so the SPOs are recruited from federal agencies, staff of federal agencies. They are the ones that the EO, the national chairman will carry all the material to INEC state offices. The REC will take over the materials. signed from EC25D. Then thereafter, at the central bank, the REC will now take these materials to the local government after distributing there, at the operationally at the central bank. Take them to the local government, hand over to the electoral officer. The electoral officer, in turn, finally, we hand over to the supervised presiding officer, who are not called staff of INEC, recruited in a matter of just within few days and all that to come and conduct this election. Now, so from the SPO down to the base, because as you have heard, INEC is going to recruit over 1 million people for this election. These categories of persons, see what the law is saying. The law says that all of these persons are going to conduct election, many of whom are going to be compromised to rig election over time, as we have known them to be, that should be held accountable. The law says that it shall not be necessary, even if they rig election, it shall not be necessary to join them in a tribunal the moment you make INEC as the first respondent, which is nominal as a legal entity, that the core people who were the makers of this document from EC8A, EC8B, EC8C, and local government down to the returning, the law says that it shall not be necessary to join them in any matter in court. That is section 137 of the current act. All right? And so, where you now have individuals who are going to man polling unit, and the law said that it shall not be necessary for a party who allegedly don't comply with the provision of this act for the conduct of the election to call oral evidence against another. How can you do that? You have that already. Now, when I was in Akwa Ibom, because there are difference between theory and practice, I haven't trained core members. Some of them, okay, there's another one I would have sent to you. They came to report to me that, Commissioner, they invited us, politicians invited us and promised us this, promise, and we said, look, we had a training and that we are going to go to 2-year J term and so on and so forth. They referred them to this section, that they are protected by this section of the law. They brought the dollars. Most of them were given $500, $1,000 by politicians. I have displayed all the picture on my table, and I have the picture. And so, how can you now have a law that decided that people who are going to conduct election, where the vote of Nigerian people, they are going to make a decision, should not be held accountable? That is what that section has done. And so, furthermore, you now also have a section that deliberately says that INEC officials are at liberty not to follow INEC regulations and guidelines. Is there in the entire act that a presiding officer fails to adhere to INEC regulation and guidelines shall not be a ground for challenging election? So in effect, what they have done is that INEC regulation and guideline is of no effect. Meanwhile, election in Nigeria is conducted under 3 legal frameworks: the Constitution in terms of hierarchy, the Electoral Act, and finally, regulations and guidelines, which are subsidiary legislation made pursuant to Section 160 of the Constitution of the Fatherland. And so, these are the booby traps that we have at the moment. And so, when we talk about credible election and good governance, credible election can only produce governance that deals with issues of accountability, policy debate that replace identity politics. When the process is trusted, the campaign shift from who are you to what you will do. That's how you get better public policy on security, education, health, and economy. And so, when One of the reasons why I agreed to, despite how I feel about the country, is that several years ago, the fourth governor of New York, Alfred Smith, when they were also going to some level of challenges, America will be 250 years, he made the point that the ill of democracy can only be cured by more democracy. And so I believe that the current effort of NGR is that achieving credible election is a multi-stakeholder responsibility of people of our country, wherever you are, in terms of what you can contribute, but principally in terms of stakeholders. We're talking about INEC, the judiciary, security agency, political party candidates, and every one of you over there that are, coming together to say, look, what can we do to change the narrative in our country? And so I want to say, as part of your effort, that the Nigerian Global Roundtable as a body, irrespective of whatever the outcome will be, as a body, you can present amendment proposals for the repeal of some of these sections. Of course, there are other groups who are already doing that at the moment, because those who were deceived to defect to some political party, now that they have lost, most of them in National Assembly, they are beginning to have a rethink. A number of them have called me and all of that, so that you can make your voice heard at the National Assembly of Nigeria in respect to the repeal of the proviso from section 60, section 63, section 65, section 77, section 137, as well as section 138 of the current 2026 Electoral Act, which I consider clearly obnoxious, that are antithetical to having election where the vote will not only count, but be taken into account, in ensuring that we have good, credible election for our country. And so this is the part that, in addition to that, I believe that, this current election, as some of the Ekiti election, or I think Oshun is also coming, as every election, are also going to be used to do an assessment of the current leader of the current commission. Because I must say this here, good laws and process and procedure are not self-implementing. They are not self-executory, because good laws, good procedure, not manned by women, men, and women of integrity committed to the ideal of free, fair, and credible election, will take a country nowhere. But inadequate laws, inadequate procedures, but manned by men and women of integrity committed to the ideal of free, fair, and credible election, will take a country somewhere electorally. These are my thoughts, and I think that as we go on, we'll be able to interrogate further. So I conclude by saying that democracy is not a destination, nor a final product that you graft into a society. It is a dynamic process that grows with the growth and evolution of society, particularly has to do with the orientation of the kind of people that you have as political elite. Because you cannot talk about democracy without a Democrat. And so credible elections stand as a bridge between the will of the people, good governance. And without that bridge, everything else collapses. And so with it, Nigeria can turn the promise of 2027 into a verdict that strengthens, not weakens, the republic. And so it is our hope that as we are going for 2027 with all your collective effort, that may the will of the people be the only verdict that will matter in the 2027 election, and may those candidates with the best idea, after a debate that we must have, there must be a compulsory debate of all those who are contesting the election. So those who have the best idea should win, so that at the end of the election, what should be left will be issue about governance and policy, and not the process of how people emerge. I thank you all.
Well, you have, Barrister Igini, you have said so much that it is almost impossible to recap all the things, all the points you have made. But I guess as we progress I should be able to come back to some of the wonderful things that you have said. You just touched everything that needed to be touched. And regarding the connection between credible election and good governance, and more so about the areas where we really need to work and work very hard to repair if that is really the way we want to go. And I like also your final conclusion when you said that the Nigerian Global Roundtable should join hands with other groups to see what we can do as to repealing some of those sections which you mentioned. I think we will be coming back to you on those sections. You know, we are going to try to put something together and still seek your counseling and input in that regard. So thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. It couldn't have been better. So thank you very, very much. We really appreciate you, appreciate your time. I know you are very busy. I know you didn't want to do this because of what you said earlier on about your disappointment about the way things are going and your thoughts that some of these talking actually bring nothing because those that are supposed to be listening are not listening. You know, some are actually almost deaf and blind from the look of things. But we'll continue to work hard and push together because the moment we give up, then it's all done, it's all over. For as long as we continue to strive, to struggle, to ask for changes, maybe with God's will, some changes may take place. So thank you very much for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Before we call on the public, so please exercise patience. I'm going to ask Dr. Akpo Mudiaga Oje to reflect on what Barrister Igini has said. You know, maybe you want to also add some ideas of yours. Particularly, I would be very grateful if you would also respond to some of the things that he has said, including your own ideas, as also as a lawyer. You know, so over to you, Prince Dr. Mudiaga Oje.
Yeah, thank you very much. I must commend the very exhilarating and highly cerebral presentation by super brother, comrade, and progressive, an eternal fighter, our brother Mike Igini. It's a wonderful presentation. He's been a mobile vocabulary and library of literature and politics, and also the law. He's a product of our school, which is based on excellence. Well, let me just take a few things. One, he talked about the setbacks in what I call the uncommon law, because the common law is a law from the people, like in England, established by the courts, and the custom, ethics, and values of the people. The Electoral Act 2026, to me, does not come within that bracket. It is a very uncommon law made by uncommon people for the same uncommon people. And provisions that are inside that act that he has highlighted speak volumes about the intent and scope of that law. If we look at the issues, like you said, the grounds upon which an election petitions can be lodged, he has told you about the expulsion of forgery as a ground, a false certificate. Not to worry, I believe true that it's a criminal offense, and regular courts' attention can be shifted from the presentation of petitions to start and engineer a criminal prosecution of whoever brought a false certificate. And also you can do that under common law and challenge it as forgery on itself, not even attaching it to elections. And above all, our constitution has made it for someone to be unqualified who sends INEC a forged certificate. So I believe that might not be the end of it. Whoever forges can still be caught within the arms and ambience of the law very effectively. Now, look at the people who can defend the vote. There's a subrequisite of one man, one vote, bandied around. I refer to it as a political slogan devoid of any legal foundation under our law. Because the Electoral Act itself has made provisions for those who can file actions to protect the vote. And they are limited to either the candidate or the political party. Now, if I cast a vote that I cannot legally defend or don't have the quo warranto to approach the appropriate authorities or judicial arm to safeguard my vote, then the vote becomes worthless of any legal certainty and foundation. Because if my political party does not file and the candidate does not equally file and they are compromised, it means my votes are used for every purpose. So if 1,000 people are credited wrongly in their votes to a rival political party, if the political party does not challenge it or the candidate, then those votes are to be accredited to the wrong party. So I believe in that light, we should open the space of those who can file applications before the election tribunals. Lord Denning has said in Arrow against MPC that let there be a floodgates. The judiciary will sufficiently shape the trust and with certainty pronounce on rights and not on the anachronistic issue of locacy, expunged from the fundamental right procedure rules, which we fought for, Femi Falana, Lisa Bakoba, and a host of others. So that's one point. And in Ghana, if you look at Section 64 of their constitution, it says any Ghanaian citizen can file an application to challenge a presidential election within 21 days. Any Ghanaian citizen. And that also takes me to the Constitution of Ghana in 1993. The Constitution passed through the death-threatened rudiments of constitutional making through the Constitutional Assembly in Ghana. It was convened to do that constitution, and they were elected to carry out that exercise. Having completed the exercise, they brought the constitution back for a plebiscite on the people to ask them the question whether this was exactly what you people wanted. And they said yes, and the constitution was passed. Unlike us, you know the history, we don't need to come and repeat it, apart from the fact that it is severely plagiarized document which has centralized authorities and indeed marginalized the microscopic minority where I come from of our people. A provision in our constitution will make you surprised to look at Section 55 of the Constitution. It says the business, English, Hausa, Yoruba, or Igbo, where there is an interpreter. And it says language of the National Assembly shall be conducted in English, Hausa, Yoruba, or Igbo, where there is an interpreter. And you all know that Nigeria goes beyond our tripod of tribes. We have large, more than 250 ethnic groups, and assorted languages. In other words, I am an Urobo man from Irene. I produce 11,000 barrels of oil to this country since the 60s, and I have a flow station. My resource was used to build the National Assembly, and my resource was also used to print the Constitution that has apparently expropriated my language. I believe that's not good. Because most of the agitations we are doing here now, we look at them, they are legal. More of them are constitutional, not just political agitations. We agree that people should have political and social rights to express their views. But let us be reminded that there are laws which are existing that have already held us down. Land Use Act held us down. We have our lands have been taken away by the government. We need to remove those laws for us to be free. And again, there is a form of demographic shenanigans in trying to pay the constituencies and representatives of the people. For example, you talk about good governance. and the elections bring in good governance. They meet in the House of Representatives, for example. This is Nigeria and her kind of democracy. They meet in a 360-member chamber. The entire south of Nigeria, which holds the resource that God has given to us. We have 55 members. From 360, 6 states of the south, we have 55 members. Only Kano has 44. Kano State has 44. So Kano just has 11 members short of the entire South, which means Kano alone can destroy any bill we bring or propose to change or to have a reform and set us free. Lagos has 23. So if you understand the politics now and the arithmetic of division of the population by election, no matter what you do, you bring your best, South must always have 55. Kano must always have 44. So if Kano and Lagos just talk, that's the end of every vote from the South. That is not good governance. That is not democracy. We need to look at all these issues. Then we look again at the issue of the judiciary. The Speaker has been under a barrage of criticism and actions, and even court actions from Edo State to different states for being forthright, for speaking the truth, for doing the right thing. So I don't blame him when he was unwilling to speak. But I know him, he will continue to speak. We share the same frustration because Nigeria is don't look. Nobody wants to speak. Gani Farami said the resilience of the Nigerian is unbeatable. And if you chase a lizard, if you miss the wall, the lizard will come back to you to make a way. But they said in Nigeria, we break a hole in the wall to escape. The resilience, Nigerians don't speak up. And those who are supposed to implement these policies of this talk, are not willing to listen to you. Good governance, reputation of the country translate to the international passport. It's a conglomeration of the collective aspiration, integrity, prestige, and status of every country in the world. So when you hold your passport, it reflects a lot of things. The Nigerian passport had a judgment delivered by the highest court of the land of Nigeria, the Supreme Court, in Attorney General of Ondo State against the AG of Federation, Part 772, the Nigeria Weekly Law Report Series. And this is what the Supreme Court said about our passport. The Supreme Court delivered this ruling on the passport and interpreted it. It said the Nigerian passport is synonymous with corruption. A judgment of the Supreme Court. It's in our legal papers. It is there, clear in our law reports, that the Nigerian passport is synonymous with corruption. Having said that and giving that judgment, do you understand why we see the country in the international world and the Committee of Nations being looked upon that we are not actually living up to expectations? In the Committee of Nations, Nigeria is supposed to be a forerunner and a white shiny charger. Unfortunately, this has not happened because of our electoral process and the governance structure of our country. There's a time a Reverend Okugbe told the world that God should destroy Nigeria. And if God doesn't destroy Nigeria, God should apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah, because we have gone beyond the narrow confines of just stealing and corruption. Come again, the primary evidence that my brother has said now, the decision of the Supreme Court, you call your INEC portal, IREV, it has no legal backing. So you want to talk about electronic transmission? What this people did, like my dad said, was just to be clever by half. You are saying you want to transmit electronically. What are you transmitting electronically in Section 60? Look at it critically. What are you transmitting? You are transmitting what has already been written in the form EC8A. That is what you record your things and send. Is that what you are sending electronically? When the damage is done, wise writing and putting things, these are the issues that we need to address legally, because the Supreme Court, checked against our former governor of Delta State, Okowa, and Atiku Obi against Tinubu has made it clear that from EC8A remains the only primary evidence of establishing results from elections. So if we are still in that state of analog, which is open to manipulation, serious manipulation, what they transmit, like entering a computer, bringing garbage and garbage out, is what you send. So the citizenry is yet to be protected in terms of having credible elections in our country. And how many, people do we have to monitor these elections and also to bring these elections live into the world? Nigeria needs to open up. There is still limited access of information, especially during voting. Like the example the speaker made now in Ekiti. We need more of that. Individuals, the consciousness must rise. What you guys are doing here now is a part of the struggle. That is why I appeal to you to join us, because it is not limited to those who go and speak outside of physical gathering. Media is a global power. One of it is to ensure that we video and film these people, these political gangsters that have put us in a situation where we are progressively retrogressing. It's unfortunate, very unfortunate, that at this stage of our country, Nigeria is at the crossroads. We have a lot of resources, but we cannot evenly develop. Now the security challenges have come up. What are we looking at in these areas during the 2027 elections? What are we looking at? That is going to form a basis for more electoral fraud. People in IDP camps are going to be called to vote, and we don't know the votes which will come out from there. Everything has been skewed and put in place to ensure that there is perpetuation of political power. So these are areas we must look at. And again, in war against MLA, part 600, the Court of Appeal said that all politicians rig elections, and those that have rigged are the ones who run to court. He said they should learn also to imbibe the culture of accepting defeat, because we have a mindset that the judiciary is the final body that determines elections, and not us. So we need to look at that. And in that spirit, we remember what Joseph Stalin said, that those who vote determine nothing, but those who count the vote determine everything. So we must ensure, first of all, the appointing procedure. We remember the Ways report in 2009, which was, ignited by our then president, a good man. Yeah, that was. He was not happy about the irregularities in his election process. He was not happy. So he had to ensure that he wanted to legitimately and genuinely reform our electoral process. And he did that. Always turned out a report, which has been put under the carpet. Part of it was searching for an independent appointment of the chairman of that body. We thank God what Jonathan recommended him at that time. And yes, and then by that amendment, accurately from the executive hamstring, has freed itself to make its rules and its procedures unchallenged by the executive. Now, the appointment process must also be looked at. Then also, welfare packages in light and in view of the uncertainty of the security in the country. The youth corps who are to be deployed we need to give them insurance policies to cover their lives. These are areas we need to look, and the funding of INEC, releasing funds on time. Releasing funds on time. How do we try to disentangle INEC from that grip, that economic grip by the executive? Approving its budgets, releasing monies. What do we need to do to make it different? Because INEC is still moving, begging. Government is still giving it money. There's a presumption that he who, pays the piper will always dictate not only the tone, but the sound of the vibrations. So these are areas I want us to look at. The issue of consensus and direct primaries, wonderful. That is good. Section 88 has made it good. And I like that they must sign all in agreement and concord and accord that they consent to this consensus. And failing which, you go for direct primaries. Direct primaries is another form of mini democratic election, which is good. Like the speaker said, they brought it in, and we commend him for that. He was behind many of the reforms we have seen here. But the man alone cannot make the forest. He needs other people to join him. With that, every member of the party is important, because the party is a satellite reflection of the larger society. So if every individual has a stake to vote, it's going to create internal democracy. So that is good. And I thank you for saying that. Now, the judiciary.
We'll be back in a moment. But in the meantime, I just want to ask Barrister Igini a question before Dr. OJ is back. As far as I know, the law says that the INEC chairman can be appointed by the president, and that nomination goes to the House of Rep or to the Senate or wherever, and then they have to approve it. And when they confirm him, then he becomes the chairperson. What is the procedure of removing him? Can the president just wake up and say, from now on, you are removed? Is he not supposed to also go back to the Senate? And the Senate has to, with a 2/3 vote majority, remove him? Or how is that now in the new law? That's what I knew of the old laws. Can you perhaps just speak to that, please?
Yeah. Okay, very quickly on that. It is one of these scholars, Alexander Pope, who was saying that for system or forms, there's no question to contest what is best administered is best. I can tell you that we have a good system. The problem is abuse. When a system or process is not understood, abuse becomes inevitable. You have a system where first, to make an appointment, if people are standing up to their responsibility, will not be where we are. The Constitution says, Section 154, the Constitution empower the president to send nomination to the Council of States. The Council of States is made up of past presidents, CEOs of the Federation, including governors of both the ruling party of the president making the nomination and opposition governors. That is the first point of call. At that level, we will expect opposition person to do due diligence. All right? So when the matter comes to council, we say, Mr. President, these are the information we have about this particular person that we have nominated at that level. Now, but what do you find in Nigeria? A council of state are made up of all governors. Once the president nominates somebody, even past president, they do nothing. Because the idea of making former president and CEOs of the federation to be part of that process is that they have taken that decision in the past, so they can avail the current president who may be taking that decision for the first time that experience. That's stage number one. Thereafter, it is sent to the Senate for confirmation. And the constitution is clear that you must not be a card-carrying member. But what do you have? You read all the story of some of the people that you find in the commission at the state level, at the rec level, and all that, who have been members of political, who are associated with political party and all of that. But that's not even a problem. One will expect that the Senate to rigorously screen, ask them questions, let them stand before the Senate on the live television to ask questions about election conduct and management. To ask questions. That is never done. Now, the last is that, can the president wake up another? No. The Constitution has provided a safeguard that even when you appoint the president, that's why some of us when we're in office, we were conscious of the fact that the president cannot remove us, because the protection given to that office, not to my person, it is to that office. It will enable me to be independent, to do my job. And that is why for the removal, the president must go by way of an address to the National Assembly seeking for the removal on 2 grounds. Those grounds are provided by the Constitution. 1, for gross misconduct, which have to be verified, or for infirmity of the mind. Maybe you are sick, you are unable to do the job. These are the only 2 grounds. And it must be supported by 2/3 majority of the 2/3 of members of the Senate. You can see the constitutional protection given. But many people, given that office, they fail to realize that they are not supposed, the job of an umpire is not an errand job. You are not supposed to, listen to the president or to the governor, whether it's of a ruling party. All right? You are there, in fact, that the Constitution says it should make that appointment. It's a duty imposed on him by the Constitution itself. It's also performing, the appointer is also performing a constitutional duty, just like you. So he's protected.
Well, thank you very much. I think that actually is exactly my knowledge for the Constitution as far as that is concerned. So thank you for shedding light on that. My next question, in the hope that Dr. OJ will be back to finish his contribution. And if that is not the case, then we will hand over something to the co-host to take questions from contributions from the participants. My next question is, during the time you were still in office and you all were working so hard to improve on the electoral system we have, I think there is something that probably you forgot, to push at the time, which would have been Electoral Fraud Commission. A commission where all the issues, all violations of electoral malpractices, or rather election processes, could be referred to, where those things can be handled a special court, a commission, and not to the normal courts, because we keep on hearing go to court. And those courts where they go to, we know what happens. Of course, Electoral Commission could also do the same. They could also be compromised, but at least that will speed up some of the issues that we are discussing here. Why was that not considered? Was there any reason?
Dr. Dover, there is nothing that we didn't do. If a part of what that skipped my mind after identifying the current obnoxious provisions was the fact that, which is what an answer to your question, is that the tragedy of our country is that those who are to be regulated by law are the ones making the law.
Mhm.
Imagine a stockbroker given responsibility to write financial regulation. What do you expect to happen? Our strategy, we must change this completely. INEC has no business going to the National Assembly every now and then as a regulator given power by the Constitution. So what we have in our country that The laws for elections are made by politicians themselves who are supposed to be regulated. The consequence of that is what we call statute sabotage and statute capture. Since 1999, the call for the establishment of Electoral Offences Commission has been on. They have refused. In the course of my presentation, I mentioned to you that, we're in the advocacy community, identify issue before we came in. It took 22 years to persuade lawmakers to change election rigging provisions. Section 49, Section 53, Section 68. These are the most dangerous ones that you have in the Electoral Act. And so we push for that. In fact, every of their so-called electoral reform, every time they always have it there. They will vote it down because they are the ones that will be caught. They will be tried in those tribunals. So they are not ready. But in any case, what we did in Akwa Ibom to show to you that, and I made the point that both the civil or criminal, yes, all they require is a directive by the courts, by the head of the court, the NJC. Just as you could see Nigeria, that we like criminality. After election, you set up tribunal to look at the winner of election, but the criminal aspect of it, you don't do anything about it. It's part of, we take it, embrace it. But all require is to invoke the criminal jurisdiction of all the courts in Nigeria. That's what I did, because the Electoral Act gives power for INEC to prosecute electoral offenders. And that was what I did. I didn't do that with the Electoral Offensive Tribunal. When people want to be dodgy, they will be quarreling with the absence of tools or the inadequate tools. We achieved that and that was not the first time. When I was in Cross River, somebody who was involved in the first conviction was with voter registration, because election rigging starts with voter registration, manipulation of the voter register. I convicted somebody in Cross River State. Some ran to Cameroon. When I moved out, some of the staff who were part of this thing, who failed to maintain the highest principle of ethical standards, I got of them weeded out up to Akwa Ibom State. And of course, the man who I say he been winning the election, was he able to win the election under my watch? It didn't happen. So, Dr. Dobo, that Electoral Offences Commission that you are talking about will not see the light of the day, because the people that will be candidate of that Electoral Offences Tribunal are the ones making the laws. They are not going to do that. So it will not lack of effort.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think that is very obvious. So we know why we are where we are, because like you correctly said, the people that the National Assembly will not pass some laws because they are afraid that those laws might catch up with them.
Yes, of course.
So that is really a problem. I can see that Professor Otanosha has joined. Okay, we don't have Dr. OJ here now, so it's not back. And to myself, I'm going to call, despite the fact that Professor Tanosha is here, I'm going to call on...
I'm seeing some hands up now. There are so many hands up.
Yes. I'm going to call on the co-host, Professor Peter Bickham, and Professor Otanosha to please take over, alternating, and to take the questions from participants, please. So I hand over now to both of you, starting with Professor Bickham, since you were here from the beginning. And then maybe you take one question, and then Professor Tanosha can take the next one. Okay, so over to both of you, please. Professor Bickham.
Can you hear me, colleagues?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear
you. Thank you very much. I want to thank the presenter, the discussants, and talking particularly from real field experience. in terms of legal issues, challenges, policy issues, etc., etc. I see he's talking from experience, talking from on grounds of he has been there, he has witnessed some of these challenges and these issues. I can see that definitely we have real problems. Much of it is about good governance, rule of law, as Dr. Adobo has indicated. Without waste of time, I would like to call on our participants to raise their hands up. I'm not in control of.
There are three hands.
Yeah.
There are three hands.
Already there are 3 hands up.
Okay.
Can we start with that? I see the hands of Joseph Dada, Jude, and Dr. Is it Bashir?
Bashikola.
Yeah, Bashikola. Thank you very much. Can we start with Joseph Dada, please?
Noble members of this association, good evening. Let me start by thanking our very erudite Professor Dr. Igini. I want to call him Professor Igini. I'm actually a fan of his. Again, my name is Dada Joseph, MNI, a retired Director of Studies from Houston, Badagry, and the incumbent Deputy President of APAM, Nairobi. It's my first time here, and I think I enjoyed every second so far, so good. Quickly, I want to start by using the local analogy in Nigeria that it's very difficult to wake a man who is pretending to be sleeping as compared to a man that actually is sleeping when it comes to issue of democracy and good governance. And from the African perspective, which I've been involved in for almost 3 decades, it's actually almost the same thing across the board. Unfortunately, that's not the truth. It's across the board. But back home as a Nigerian, everybody keeps talking about the leadership question. But I also ask myself, what about the followership questions? I am born and bred in Surulere, in Lagos here. And a friend of mine says he wants to come out for a counselor. And the first thing they ask him is, you are just talking counselor now for mouth. No good talk only for us to even begin to talk about this counselor. I will build on that later on. But for me, I'm trying to say it's a fallacy to believe that leadership as the sole solution. The role of followership is equally very imperative. Two, and I think Dr. Igini mentioned it, the existence of law, as we say in economics, is a necessary but not a sufficient condition to achieve our goals. A lot of this needs to change. The laws can be there, the laws can be perfect, but who are the people? Who are the stakeholders to manage the law? So in terms of the perception of the stakeholders and the general perception of our public offices in Africa is about winner take all, working for your pocket, I call it. The idea is not about service to our people, which is why even the former president of the Obasanjo said it's do or die. If I want to serve people, why should it be do or die? Then I think I should raise the issue of I think the issue of credible election is they are not optional. Only in our case, credibility is subjective. Once I win an election, INEC is good. Once I lose, INEC is bad. So who defines credibility? I'm sure most of us know this. To even go as part of the security team, those who went to Ekiti, some of them had to go and lobby to be part of the team to go to Ekiti. Not because they want to go and protect something, because they know that something will come along with it. The governor will house them, put them in hotels, feed them, and then give them something. It's an open secret. How do we address such things? In terms of the various instructions that the speaker spoke, he has said is the man whom you want to catch as a thief, you are asking him to break law for thieves. What kind of law do you expect of him? So that takes me back to the view of the followers. Why are the followers not following such things? Why are we not raising issues from National Assembly and say, no, you can't pass this? I watched a video yesterday, a TikTok something. They were asking undergraduates the full meaning of INEC. They don't know. But they spend 12 hours, 13 hours on phones. The followers are not genuinely following the issue of democracy and governance. It's more about, oh, in fact, like somebody says, when you say somebody about a particular person in a particular party, you become an enemy. So it's more about how do we assure that the stakeholders as a whole, from the politicians themselves, who really want to go and even if you have the rules that they want to go and snatch ballot boxes, send guns to give people guns to go and disrupt election where they think they are losing. The thing is, if my brother is there, something will come to me. Not the fact that is my brother capable. Religious bodies, they have become campaign platforms now. So for me, I think the followers, and in those countries that we talk about that things are moving, there's no way politicians want to follow the rules. It's not the man in the JD, they call it the US. It's not showing us that politicians are the same all over the world. But the strong institutions and the people are putting their feet on certain things. Can we say we're doing the same thing here? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. I think the two key things here is you are talking about followership question and leadership question, and that leads to credibility. I think the speaker will address those two issues. And I'll ask Jude to, thank you, to ask these questions. Let us be brief and probably straight to the point. Thanks.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. My name is Dr. Jude Okonkwo, a political scientist from University of Vienna, Austria, working with the state of Austria. At the moment, the national president of Nigerian community in Austria. I must have to thank all of you for this roundtable today, gentlemen, qualified professors. You've given your worries and what is all going bad in our society, in our electoral arena. I must have to say that what is happening is very normal, and it will continue to happen. It will continue to happen. There is I have not seen any remedy at all. For instance, our school children are not encouraged to be in school, no compulsory literate level of our pupils. The laws are not being obeyed. The political culture has never been cultivated or solidified. Patriotism is replaced with tribal sentiments. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. I've not been seeing it. Pointing fingers here and there. No punishment for wrongdoings and all whatnot. Which country can go on, can cope with this? It's really not possible. But what I also see here is the patriotic endeavor of this roundtable of our people. I think with that, I think we can hold on this, and then I'm suggesting and pleading to this roundtable to please to continue to do the good work we are doing. Meantime, we will then have time to try to see if we can, because if you are building a house, we are building a house, no foundation. And we will lament tire now. It's just like people building houses where there's hurricane with wood in the US. The rain, the wind will come, the tornado will come, and everything will go away and all whatnot. So I'm very, very sure that all of you are very professional, brilliant people. we will I suggest that we will in future try to start building the foundation, because we have not started. Otherwise, this election 2027 coming around, why should it be different? Because we have not been doing anything different. You do the same thing, and when they say the different result, it's not really not possible. Solving of a problem is first of all identifying it. It is an agenda. Now we have to identify the problem, then we can solve it. We can solve it as long as we remain consistent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Once more, thank you, Dr. Jude Okonkwo. I appreciate yours is more of a comment, and by the questions which you are asking is how will the 2027 election ensure credibility? I think those are what I was able to capture, which the speaker would, do justice to that. Thank you very much, sir. Otherwise, I will go to the next person, which is Dr. Oh, Bashir. Sorry, Bashir. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Professor. And thank you, Dr. Dobo, for putting up this program. Thank you for, everything you've been doing in this our roundtable. It's been a pleasure. And I want to thank Barrister Igini and the passion. I've been watching you for many years, those of us who follow politics in Nigeria, the passion at which you explain, trying to even go beyond your remit as this, you also try to educate the electorate, which sometimes is not ordinary in Nigeria. Many people are ignorant, actually, even though, even those people are in university schools. Somebody has just given an example that even university students don't know what's the meaning of, the INEC, and that is not only peculiar to that situation. So a lot of things people don't know. And as a result, they got emotional instead of following due processes, things that are put in place to regulate situations. People don't know them. You have given examples of, nomination of INEC chairman, the processes that is supposed to go through. Why were those processes put in place? They were put in place because they know we are human. People are vulnerable. Either you are influenced by friendship, influenced by their familiar relationship, or any other of for political reasons and other things, or of lack of knowledge also. You might nominate somebody and you don't know the background fully, because the president sometimes they bring something to the table. You only read the brief, and of course the signs and all those things. And as a result, it might put somebody in place who have been a member of a political party, or even a current card member of a political party, and discover later that is the case. So the people involved and the institutions put in place to help make make a country great are not doing their job. If the Senate are not doing the job they're supposed to do to, because bringing candidates to them for approval is for them to be able to go beyond what the president knows and dig more, but they're not doing that. That's a problem. We have laws. Our laws are good, because sometimes when I read, even as an economist, even when I read our economy policies and programs and all those things, they are laudable. The problem is implementation. The people behind the implementation, because those things cannot just automatically do themselves. People are supposed to be are the one that carries out those things. So Nigeria has that problem of people. People need to be upgraded to the level of carrying out the mission or the reasons for those things, for those laws. Text might be maybe not expressing fully, and that's why sometimes, and Barrister Igini has said it, the judiciary, especially the Supreme Court, I know in some countries they have constitutional courts that are supposed to not only interpreting the laws, but they also try to bring out the intention of those laws. And I think that's what the Supreme Court should be doing for us. Because if they are able to go beyond the text of the law itself and say, well, the reason behind why these laws are being put in place is to avoid vote rigging. The IRF was necessary as a mechanism of preventing those fraud that we discovered that from polling units to the collation center, there is something that's always going wrong. As a result, IRF is put in place to make sure that results are recorded, and as a result, it can be retrieved. And these are many other instances that the Supreme Court is supposed to help, enlighten the public that this is the intention, because it is the way they interpret the law that is what the law is. It's the interpretation that is the law. It's not the text only. It is how it is being interpreted. What is used to, it was used to, to regulate any modern countries are all these interpretations that the Supreme Court gives to one thing or the other. And at the end of the day, the school, the whole citizen becomes, very develop a good perception of the system they have, even though you might be looking at it from the outside and say, oh, it's bad. But it is the perception of people. If people believe in what they are doing, to them, that is the best system. So we should help the people to understand our system. We should, do things that technically possible. Like a law should be written in such a way that allows the INEC, that has the constitutional right to regulate the law, to regulate election. They should be given that rule to also develop, not going to constitutional amendment, because sometimes you can't get 2/3 of states to approve a version or a clause of the constitution. Automatically that constitution will not, that amendment will not stand. And those are the predicaments of that country. Many things have been started, but at the end of the day, you'll be asking, oh, where is this law? You discover that the law did not pass because we could not get the 2/3 majority of the houses of assembly to approve them. So to avoid those things is to give rights to those institutions that the Constitution has already, put in place. The the Independent Electoral Commission, and many other places that will help the country to develop very fast in electoral practices. We cannot get it right at the first beginning, but at the end of the day, I think we can get it done if we are consistent, as I say, and also looking at the reasons for those amendments that have been put in place, that either Act, Electoral Act 2022, which everybody, complain about. Now we have 2026. People are also complaining because when they resolve one, another one will pop up. And because the politicians, they are very clever, they know what they are doing. They know forever there will not be that amendment that will satisfy, their needs. So they need to be always putting something in place that will become a problematic in future. So thank you so much for giving me the floor, and apologies for my children's background noise. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I really appreciate that question. I think what you are trying to put here is in terms of way forward. That is to say, what do we do come 2027 in terms of processes, putting the right people in place, and the implementation. If I get you right, that's roughly how I can summarize it.
Okay, thank you very much for the comment and the two questions put together. First, it's about the question of leadership and followership as a challenge in our country. Let me say this here, that it is the complexity, you see, in any society, the complexity of managing a society inevitably will lead to the emergence of a number of people, a minority people, which we call the elite, which are a minority group, supposedly very powerful, organizationally very capable, and all that. And so, but the problem we now have in our country is that the pyramid of our value is now upside down. Dishonesty is now on top. I grew up in an environment where honesty was something celebrated. As a young man growing up, my father was always talking about integrity when I was much younger, because my father was a respected somebody, community leader, well-respected, honest man. So as I was growing up, because he was emphasizing on integrity, so initially I said, when I grew up, I'm going to study. I thought integrity is a course of study. So I said I was going to study integrity. I didn't know that integrity is just, way of conduct yourself, behave well, and so on and so forth. Now, you cannot have the kind of followership that we expect, where right now, the people we see those who occupy position of leadership, they are supposed to be role modeled. We had the Awolowos of their time, Zeke, and so on and so forth. People want to be like, there are people when you grow up, so I want to be like this person and all that. All of us here in this panel, all the current politicians you see, apart from just a handful, one or two or three, as the case may be, I really don't know. How many of us will want our children to see any of these people as role models? I don't think so. And so the followers, they have also tried, because you have seen the kind of people you parade today as leaders, people who have no philosophical insight to what leadership is all about and what service is all about. Have found themselves in position of leadership in our country. Today we are in a state of anarchy. Before growing up, when you do the right thing, you are celebrated, you are promoted. But today in our country, doing the right thing is an anathema. Your life will be in danger. My colleague was killed in Kano. They set the house on fire, himself, his wife, and children. They were killed because he's too tall and mighty in defense of credible electoral process. And he was killed. Myself, I have missed death several times. I've had to be conducting election. I was in charge of Osun State in 20 Ife South, because there's a dreaded politician in that very area. Everybody ran away. And so they thought it must be Guinea. I said, I'm not going to go there because everybody ran away. They had to give me armored personnel carrier to go and conduct election. In Akwa Ibom, in my official house, there's an APC, armored personnel carrier, in front of my house at the back. Then in my office, everything I saw around me was violence. How do you serve your country under that type of situation? Apart from that, I mean, you heard about, one of the things you talked about, Sabita, when somebody wanted to buy the whole state to bring $10 million to buy a state and all that. Now, you reject all of that, they go after you. And so, that's the kind of situation we have found ourselves. People, very many of you who are here today, you can remember some of your classmates who were almost like a dropout, who were nobody, either in primary school or secondary school, but because they are in politics. Look at where they are today. Look at where they are today because they are in politics.
Well, it seems the line of Barrister Igini is hanging. Okay, maybe you want to pass the questions to Dr. OJ in the meantime until he returns, if you don't mind. Is that okay, Professor Bickham?
Yeah, it seems fine, I think, so that they can also make his input to Dr. OJ.
Please, can you rephrase your questions again, the question again? Because
Okay.
listening to my phone. Yes.
Okay, there were from the three participants, the guys, the issue was about the followership question and the stakeholder, their credibility in terms of election. The other one by Dr. Jude Okonkwo was about how will the 2027 election be, how can we ensure how credibility in the forthcoming election. And the one by, that is the main thing. Otherwise, what he was talking about was making some comments and contribution. The other one by Dr. Bashir was about processes, the credibility of processes. How do we ensure good governance through the credibility of processes and the people that will be that are put in place in addition to implementation of the process. These are the key things. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. Before I cut off, I wanted to just add something before the speaker on the issue of independent candidacy. That's a very strong thing we need to look at because of the tyranny of financial strength and muscle one needs in these political parties to survive, to come and contest election. We're advocating for independent candidacy. Now, if we are talking about how we can have free, credible, and safe elections in 2027, well, I don't think anybody needs the clairvoyance of Minister Demos to know that the 2027 elections are likely to go the same way, if not worse. The Electoral Act upon which this thing is being done and contested under has come out with very harsh and severe laws and principles against the voters, and as exclusively as it appears, granted powers to those who are operating presently and want to rule in future. So that's why I use the word perpetuation. What we can do, since my dad usually says what cannot be cured has to be endured. We need to endure through this 2027 before we sit down and try to reform truly the electoral process by looking at this act. So apart from that, without prejudice, government needs to try and reduce the hunger in the land. A hungry man is an angry man. Most of these people are going to vent their anger, ironically, on people who went to vote to change the system. They are going to be attacked. And some areas voting will not take place because of violence. The government, both state and federation, that is saddled with the responsibility of maintaining the rule of law and peace, I'm telling you, are usually instigating it, instigating violence. And you talk about processes, the police, security agents, government officials put in place to ensure processes and compliance. We are a little bit academic here. You need to come to Nigeria and understand. And see people who are put in places like Fela will read them, we say power show. It's power show. It's not about compliance or processes. It's about power show. Nigeria, who has power. And indeed, who is exercising the power for. Once a ruling administration is in place in Nigeria, near Africa, it's usually difficult to ensure compliance and follow processes because entrenched interests have already been put in their mindset. And in the night and day, they were sworn into government. So we say for the purpose of speaking, to ensure that security is in place, also providing food, palliatives. People are hungry, creating jobs. There is tension all over the country. Apart from terrorism and banditry, there are other perceived tensions, hunger, inequality, exclusion. All these are going to key into the election. People are planning for the election. Some not to vote, some to prevent voting. While others are paying money. There's a video going around where they're throwing bread in Ekiti State. They're throwing bread at the people. They're picking it on the ground. That is the level we have gotten to in this country. Bread. It's a video going around. People are picking the bread from the ground to show the endemic nature of the poverty in place, which cannot be, excluded or isolated in finding out how peaceful the elections will be. Remember, that majority of the bandits you're seeing today, if not terrorists, were either used sometime before or to be used now by these same people who are contesting. It's a very terrible situation. When the speaker was telling you how his life has missed death several times, that is true. That is completely true. Because we are now and himself a set of endangered species. If you speak the truth, you are in trouble. If you criticize the government, you're in trouble. So, and the stomach infrastructure, people are hungry, so they are ready to do anything. So, my take is that in society, like they say, that our price of freedom is eternal vigilance. We need a constitutional and constructive consciousness of our people to rise up and understand that they need to fight to change their country. That it doesn't depend on Mike Igini, Femi Falana. It also depends on us to keep the struggle. So that said, I think security is important, hunger to be eliminated, intimidation by the government. Then the issue of processes, like you said, I've answered it along the line, just saying, whoever you appoint, you need to have a courageous man. You need to have, I will use the word in quotes, a non-Nigerian mentality man. In Nigeria, we live in chop, I chop. These are just the truth. We don't need them at this stage. Let it be a fair contest. Let the Attorney General don't put himself together and file an action to direct a political party, technically on legal grounds and not on the ground of electoral contest. So that is my take, that the government itself, even though is to implement the processes, is also directly involved, if not the agent provocateur. So what do? Become citizens vigilance. Thank you.
Barrister Igini was talking when the line went off. So maybe you want to hand it over to him to complete what he was saying. Is that okay, Professor Bickham?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I thought.
So you are in charge, so you can. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very sorry. Our system here, I have to switch to another Wi-Fi to be able to reconnect back. So, well, I was just making the point that everything rises and falls with leadership, and that on the part of the people, you recall what happened on June 12th. Who were the people that were killed? Oh, of course, prominent people died and all that. The majority of the people that were the common people, Nigerian people who stood up to fight, and they were killed. You remember the NSAS protests, how the young people of this country were killed. That has happened. Now, expect some of the provision about, when they resume, all of you, we all watch how the youth Nigerians, all of them, Abuja, everywhere, and all that. Where we are, it's a case of the FACO no longer lead to the FACO. That is where we are at the moment. So it's not much of the problem now. It's not really much of the follower. Therefore, they are trying. Look at the level in the country now. How many people are able to feed? How much more the laws are even going out to protest? That is what they have reduced the country to at the moment. And so this is where we are. To build institutions, you need, men of integrity, men of value to even first and foremost build institutions. Someone will say, strong institutions that obey the law and not politicians. Today, we have political actors who don't value legacy, rather than thinking about legacy, they are thinking about power. That's where we are today. And so, in terms of followership, people are trying their best, trying to speak up, even right now, protests even suppressed in the country at the moment. You are aware right now that, every expression or anything said about a governor, a legislator, something like that, they are easily able to track them, to arrest them, because of that. You saw how one Jalingo, was under trial for a very long time because of the fact that he was said to have said things about the governor of, is it Cross River State? We have seen all of that. Now, to end my point on that, I don't want to mention the name. There's an individual who has served as a governor in Nigeria. Apart from himself, I have never heard one day about EFCC or ICPC.
going after any of those who serve as commissioners with him when he was governor. We have not seen that. So once we have a leader that can show the moral direction, people will follow. That is not, that we will not have that right now. They are rewarding people who do the wrong thing. If you can kill, if you can maim, you are rewarded. Those who do the wrong thing are the ones now being celebrated in our country, unfortunately. That is where we are now. Now, with respect to the issue of how to make the 2027, which was the second question. You see, whatever we want to make of our country is clearly in our hands. You see, hope belongs to the living. Irrespective of how I feel about the country, something tells me that the 2027 election will be more than a test. And that Nigerians, from what I see a situation where Nigeria will rise up in this 2027 Nigeria to make sure that their votes count. It's in our hands. And that is why the best we can do is to encourage them, call Nigerians out. There are some suggestions at the appropriate time, because what I've seen from my experience is that there are things that when you put them out now, those who want to rig elections, they find a way around those things if you put them out so early. But I can tell you that very close to the election, there are some public engagement, and some of us are going to involve, and also to let critical stakeholders know some of the things that they need to watch out for as we are going for that. That's why for the Nigerian Roundtable group, that you need to, some of the issues we have raised, some of the critical areas that you need to focus on, narrow down. You see, issues about appointment and all of that, those are matters will not be left for the next government. But for us to be able to go for this election, you should focus your attention, your advocacy, the letter you are going to write to the National Assembly, or open letter to Mr. President, should be focusing to focus on the issue about this result transmission to the auditing, because before Ghana got to where it is today, empire they've ever had that put Ghana on that trajectory, it even got to a point even where they are now that you have to audit, you call for the audit of source of ad hoc staff, which of the agencies. Now, also, you also need to write letter, because right now, what they have done, vice chancellors that are being appointed now, when we conceived the idea of using the university lecturers and all that, was that we wanted ASU to be in charge, but they have reversed that now. Now, vice chancellors appointed by the government are not the one compiling the names of collation and returning officers. So the university community we need to speak to the university community. And look, the future of Nigeria is in your hands, because those that are going to read this election are going to be drawn from the university community and from NYSC. Number 3, your letter to either to the Electoral Commission or to the particularly for Electoral Commission is that all issue about recruitment, ballot, where are the companies, that will do the production of ballot papers? We need to do the auditing of those areas now. That's the kind of thing that happened in Ghana, to the extent that at that time, when ballot papers are printed outside the country, the Ghanaian opposition or the stakeholders in the country ensure that those companies outside Ghana were identified. You need to do things like that. That is the only way we can do it. And with respect to judiciary, I must say this here, that historically, the judicial system has never stood on the side of the overwhelming issue of the sanctity of the ballot box in Nigeria. Remember, the 2/3 of 19 states, after that judgment, the Supreme Court said it should not be used as a precedent. If you made a judgment that is good enough, why should it be served as a precedent in future? Remember that. Remember, in 1983, Despite the mudslide and landslide that was witnessed, judiciary didn't stand on the side. They validated almost all the election. Also recall that the subversion, the crisis 12, started with my colleagues, lawyers, who provided services, legal services, to Ato Izebe and Bola Davis, using unregistered body called Association for Better Nigeria. They went to court. Who presided over that matter? Lawyer, Justice Basic Peme, who sat by 9 p.m. to give an order in violation of Decree number 13 that expressly prohibited ousted the judiciary of the court from giving any order stopping the holding of that election. Judiciary have never been on the side of the sanctity of the ballot paper. Remember, in 2007, the one that in terms of the effort of Yaradua, you recall that in the 2007 election, ballot papers were not serialized. They were not serialized. Ballot papers were in South Africa when that election was conducted. Who determined it? It was 7 justices. It was 3-4. Today, rather than the will of the people expressed fully, fairly at the polling unit and determined, it is now the court that's now conducting election in our country, to the extent that who is a candidate is also now determined by the court right now. You could see the kind of judgment that are going to. Well, thank God, in the last 1 month or so, from Justice Abdul Malik and that of Motosho and all that, which is consistent. There's no contradiction in that and all that. And of course, the speed with which the Court of Appeal intervened with respect to the registration of political party and all that, which is okay. But largely, the court have never been on the side of upholding the sanctity of the vote of the Nigerian people. And that's a tragedy. And so my point is that, and I've always been saying this, calling my colleagues both in the bar and the bench, that if Nigerian democracy will die, it will die because of we lawyers. Because the first early sign of the subversion of democracy is the rule of law, the failure by the court to hold political elite accountable on question of rule of law. The rule of law is a graceful ornament to a well-ordered governed society. And so any democracy without the rule of law has in it a virus that may lead to its death. The greatest problem we are facing in our country today is that we are in a state of anarchy. The rule of law is absent in our country today. That's the challenge that we have. But we are able, as a people and as a country, to recognize the primacy of politics and political processes, realizing that we can never fix our economy without first fixing and facing the policies with ourselves. Who are the people that sit on the political roundtable to take decisions, given that development issues are embedded in politics and political processes? This is the challenge about our leadership recruitment process, which is the most unfortunate. And that is why we are having problem of consolidating our democracy. We are still in transition because democracy gets to the point of consolidation where it has all it takes to build and consolidate on the basic tenet of democracy in any politically organized society. But at the moment, we are not there. So these are my thoughts with respect to the comment and the few questions that have been asked by the two dons. Thank you very much.
Barrister Igini is here now. It will not be easy to get him back again or to get him again, in a conversation like this. He's really, really one of the true experts of election-related matters in Nigeria today. When I say one of the true experts, I mean it. I mean every word of it. If Nigeria was a good country, I think they would be considering him for the chairmanship of INEC. If Nigeria really wanted a good country and a functioning and a fearless person who will do a good job, not because he's here, but because of what he stands for and what he has been doing. So any further questions? We have the opportunity now of discussing with him and of course with Dr. OJ. We are now rounding up Dr. Professor.
I think what I would like to say here is that if there are real serious burning question which touches on way forward, I think would be very cogent to really have that question asked so that the speaker can respond to that. I know he has talked about it a little bit, but I think in terms of way forward, it's very, very important. If this forum is going to write a kind of something to send. Thanks.
Okay, Tommy.
Well, let me just, if you allow me, Mr. Professor Bickham, to just add something to what you just said. I think Barrister Igini has already said what he expects us to do and what he expects also other groups to do at this point as a kind of contribution to the way forward by pressing on the National Assembly to consider reversing some of those points which he identified. That said, it is easier to wake a sleeping person than to wake somebody who is pretending to be asleep. So I think what we have in Nigeria now is that they are pretending to be asleep. So it is very difficult to move them to do the right things because apparently they know what is right, but they are just not doing them. So my contribution to that is this is a question to Barrister Igini. To what extent do you think, going from the fact that you know the system from inside out, that any intervention from groups like the Nigerian Global Roundtable can affect any change of mind of these people? Because apparently they are only pretending not to know what to do. They know what to do. And your interventions have also been public all over the place. You have been on several televisions. You have spoken about these things. Even before the law was passed and appended to, or rather, before the president signed it, you also sent out appeal, asking that certain things should be considered and so, and notwithstanding, they were, I wouldn't say ignored, but they were not done, So how do you think that our intervention now will lead to any change of mind? I can see that Dr. Bashekola has raised his hand. So Professor Pickham, if you don't mind, if you want to add Dr. Bashekola's intervention to what I just said, so that Barrister Igini can address it, and Dr. OJ as well, if he has anything. So we are rounding up now, so we don't want to make this a merry-go-round, so that we can bring this to an end soon. So over to you, Professor Bickham.
I think, Chair, I think you can still conclude since we are rounding up after Dr. Bashir has asked his question and the Commissioner and Barrister Igini has answered. I think then you can do justice on what is next.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, Doc, for giving me the opportunity. I just wanted to ask two questions. One question is to Barrister Igini. Is there any, because it seems I read it somewhere that even after election, after results have been declared, there is a certain period of time that the INEC could review the result that was so declared. For example, if they are able to tabulate polling unit by polling unit results, verify with what was signed by all the parties that were there, because I know after the election, they always declare, is it Form E8 or something like that, that they can after tabulating it and verify it with the actual result that was declared, and if there is any discrepancy or anything there, that they could reverse themselves. Is that true? That's the first question. The second question is, did you actually, during your time, consider, setting a threshold of people's participation in election before we can say an election is valid, is legible? Not inconclusive that they always declare. I mean, the participation, how many voters actually came out to vote. If it's below certain percentage, then you might say that election should be taken again. Is there any time that such thing was declared? In some countries, they have it. Even in some countries, they have what they call against everyone. That is somebody can come out and declare that none of the political parties should be voted for, and people vote against. Are there any such discussions, during your time? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Let me say the last question. Yes, it's a very troubling development that we can declare somebody a president, a governor, who has this score 50+1. That's something that we need to look to, because look at the last election, 26% voters turnout, and look at the vote of the person who returned as president and the other subsequent people. So it's an issue that how can we now have a country where somebody scored 36%, 37% of the vote, not 50+ and all that? So really, it's one that needs to be taken on. When we talk about reform, these are things we expected them to take on, but they are not ready to do so. Number two, the practice in 1979, 1983 was that the winners of election, outcome of election should be determined before people are sworn in, to prevent those who got sworn in using public money to file election tribunal to bribe. Refuse to change all of that. So that is respect to that. So that's an issue that picking up. Now, what is the first question again? The other question, please remind me.
I was asking if there was a review, a process, a time frame that the electoral committee itself could go through.
Okay, right, yes.
Yeah, through the system from polling booth to the collation. Yes.
Yeah, right. Section 68 of the 2010 Act. I said it presentation. 68 of the 2010 Act, gives power to returning officer who just appointed within few days and all that. That whatever it says is final. That can only be challenged at the tribunal. So by virtue of section 65 of the amendment to section 68, now section 65 of the 2022 Act, INEC has the window of 7 days rather than going to court to spend 6 months, 180 days at the tribunal, 60 days at the Court of Appeal, 60 days at Supreme Court. INEC now have within 7 days to do that window. That is to say, whenever there's an area, a constituency where there are issues and all that, once the report is escalated immediately, then you put that result on hold until a determination is made. That again, that power has now been watered down in the current amendment. In fact, the current amendment of the 2022 Electoral Act is essentially meant to protect themselves. It is meant to protect themselves and nothing more. And that is what they have done with respect to that. I think that's really two questions. You see, when we came in, the old section 53 of the 20th number of registered voters. Now, all over the world, globally, even if you have 100 people as registered voters in a particular polling unit, it is not possible for the 100 people to come and vote on that day. But though INEC, in our operation, there's a presumption. We presume that it is possible. So we can print maybe 10% additional of that number. However, it was that section that they were using to rig election. Rather than base computation on total number of registered voters, those who actually came
You recall that I told you that in 2011, when we came on board, because of Section 52 of the 20 Act that prohibited the use of any form of electronic to be able to identify the principle of one person, one vote, we have to do separate time for accreditation and separate time for voting so that we can know the actual set of people. Now, those periods you had inconclusive elections was as a result of the fact that computation was based on total number of registered voters, in which case a registered voter where you have people who have died, people who have traveled, those who deliberately will not even come. Why will you base computation of total number of voters on total number of registered voters instead of those who actually came or those who actually collected the permanent voter card? Because we had record. For example, you have 100 people in a polling unit. Only 40 people collected PVC. And without your PVC, you cannot vote. So it will be absurd to base your computation on total number of other 60 people who did not collect permanent voters card. So that was why we do separate time for voting and separate time for accreditation. But by the time we now introduce the card reader, that was no longer necessary. We cannot vote at the same time. You do simultaneous accreditation with the what they call it, the card reader, or now the beavers. At the same time, you go on and vote. That was why for a long time now, you have not been hearing about inconclusive elections. And so for 2027, as my final take on all that we have said today, is that I can tell you here, somebody noted that in terms of law, Nigeria have good laws. Our challenge, the devil, is in the implementation. Nigeria electoral system had a skeleton of a system that can protect democracy. That I can tell you. But a skeleton cannot work without the muzzle. Muzzle is enforcement, independence, and civic vigilance. We now want INEC that must say no to power, just as security agents are expected to be neutral and to protect voters, not parties, and not Nigerians value their vote more than, they must value their vote more than 2,000 naira. Vote buying is becoming an issue. And the reason why we now have incident of vote buying, unlike in 2003 and 2007, where they don't even record with the people. Those elections in those periods, when you go to the, you travel home to say you want to go, but say, oh, election have been conducted yesterday. They will not record with the people. Because of innovation that have been introduced, they now know that vote now matters. And regrettably, what they have now decided to do is to be biased. In 2003, 2007, there was no recourse to the people. They just write the result as at that time. But because of the technology, there must be what they call digital evidence of something and all of that. That is why they are doing what they are doing at the moment. So, but all of that need to be checked. No nation can rise or make progress beyond value orientation of its political elite. Where we are today, the level we have got to in our democracy is clearly because of the kind of elite that we have as a leader. But if we are able to speak to them, like I have said, which is I think one of the things that Professor talked about, is that what you need to do, you ask the question, what else can you do given what Nigerians have done and that? No. You see, one of the three predicates of liberal democracy is the existence of groups like the NGR, like all other groups, that will mount pressure on the elite. And that is that kind of pressure that will usually lead to the possibility of emergence of public spirited leaders. As I told you, following what they have done, following this abracadabra kind of thing they conducted, what they call primaries and all that, many of them who thought that they were going to get ticket, they didn't get ticket now. And we want them that it's in their best interest, have a good system in place so that you can go to any other political party and all that. They appear to be now amenable. And that is why I said you can write your letter, publicize it as to the thing that you consider as matter of urgency to be dealt with before we go fully into the 2027, so that we can build a society, a country where there will be opportunity for all and responsibility from all. Thank you.
Dr. OJ, because we are rounding up, maybe he wants to also make his final statement. So up to you if you want to pass that to him.
If he's around, he can make his final contribution in a summarized format. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our great Dr. Edobo, for apparently saving me from the problem we are discussing here, which is exclusion. What I just want to add is that there's a system in place which we must check how the political parties run their internal democracy, notwithstanding the advancement of our cause. As you are aware, you talked about party primaries, and I believe nearly all parties have concluded their primaries. Did you ask yourself where are the results and who are the winners so far announced? That is where I close my comments. Thank you.
I just want to summarize one or two things just to say that this topic is topical. Yeah, democracy, the imperative of credible election and good governance. I think the discussants and the main speaker, they have talked about four key things. What is credible election? Why does it matter? The elements of credible election, that is true. What is good governance? And the third thing is the key challenges and the way forward. Those are the two things, four things that in one way or the other we have participated and we've discussed and we have alluded to most of those things. I think the conclusion, as the speaker has said, in my opinion, is that an election is an audit. And the issue of governance is a service. Therefore, if the audit is fake, you will not get good governance. That is my take from what I was able to get in way of conclusion. Thanks, Chair. Back to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Professor Bickham, for the moderation, for your summary of the contributions. And so thank you very much. You have done very well, highly appreciated. And I don't know if Barrister Igini still want to have a final statement before we round up. I mean, the last things he said were very cogent, but if you just want to have a final word, then you may please do that now before we do the vote of thanks and round up and close this very, very interesting conversation. It's been really very, very rewarding, at least for me. And so if there's anything you just want to say, last words, and then we will then round up. Please.
My last thing, yes, sir. Well, just first to Dr. Edobo, Prof. Akbo, and every other participant, to thank every one of you for considering this very important topic to be engaged on at this critical time as we are looking forward to the 2027 election. Clearly, the institution of democracy, representing democracy, we have no hopeful future if we don't have this type of sustained engagement by key stakeholder, both home and in diaspora. And so, for me, I thank you for the opportunity, and we pray that by 2027, we'll be able to of our country, so that really we can have a reset of our country and be able to develop on the paths that we expect Nigeria should be. So thank you very much.
Well, okay. Thank you very much for those final words. I wish to once again thank you, Barrister Igini. I truly appreciate your time this evening. I know how hard it was to get you to do this. and how reluctant you were, not because you are not very passionate about Nigeria's matters, but because of the fact that people are talking and talking, and some people who are in the position to actually effect changes are not listening for their own personal interest. So I really appreciate your being here today on behalf of the Nigerian Global Roundtable. We thank you for being here with us this evening and spending the time you have spent with us. So we would look into the advice you have given to us with the letter, and probably also still get back to you to consult with you about how best to go about those points and those issues, because you are an expert in those areas to avoid us making any mistake. So thank you so much. And of course, I want to also thank Prince Dr. OJ for his time and for always being there each time we call him. He's always willing and to assist, to be a part of our events. So we thank you and appreciate your time that you have shared with us this evening. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of myself, I also want to thank members of the Nigerian Roundtable who have participated in this very event this evening. Unfortunately, maybe there have been some issues with logging in. I know Zoom had some issues. That is where probably the number is not what we had expected, but never mind. The video will be shared. The video of the event will be shared with all the other members who have not been able to make it here today. And the video will also be on YouTube and so on. So we will see that the video is shared widely. And Professor Bickham, thank you very much for your willingness to step in because of Professor Tanusha, who was supposed to be the co-host, but because he's on the road on a short notice, you offered to help out. So really appreciate your efforts and support. So thank you very much. To the other members, so thank you very much for your time, and other participants, thank you very much for being here. So with this, I think we will bring this conversation to an end.